welcome to the program. This is Moneyline with Nancy, and I am Nancy Nnaji. Today it is a special. I'm having an exclusive interview with the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Godwin Emefiele. Since he became the Central Bank governor in 2014, precisely June, a whole lot has happened as it concerns central banking and the banking system in Nigeria, and of course the state of the economy. You will know that when Nigerians talk about the economy, perhaps the first institution they will look at is the Central Bank of Nigeria. Godwin Emefiele became the Chief Executive Officer at Zenith Bank. Of course, if we take a total of his career, as I speak right now, 31 years, including his central banking career. And he studied at the University of Nigeria in Nsukka. Let me welcome my special guest on the program, Godwin Emefiele, the Central Bank Governor.
Thank you very much for having me, Nancy. It's a great pleasure. Let me start this from the standpoint that it's as if I knew what is happening now, what had happened between 2014 and now was going to happen. Because when I took the mantle of leadership at the Central Bank of Nigeria, precisely 2 days after I took over, I read my vision. In that vision, we were very clear that we would be a people-centered central bank. What we thought we were doing with that is that we will run a central bank that has a focus not only as a central bank that focuses on price and monetary stability, exchange rate, but that we wanted a central bank that would have at the back of its mind the people and the country as paramount. That how would our decisions here for the next 4-5 years, how will these decisions impact positively on the life of our people? And I made that a mantra, not only at management, but also at the Monetary Policy Committee meetings, where I said that as we begin this journey in 2014, our people, the country, must be the center of our decisions. That even if you want to take a decision to say, look, you want inflation to come down, you want interest rate to come down, it shouldn't just be as simplistic as saying you want inflation to come down, you want interest rate to come down, you want exchange rate to come down. What are the basic issues that underline those decisions to the extent that you say, how does it impact positively on the lives of our people? And I'm delighted that we've done that. Since 2014, since about the middle of 2014, we've seen very serious external shock that has unfortunately impacted adversely on the economy, that has impacted adversely on the lives of our people. And that's why we have taken the responsibility to say, we are not just about pursuing price and monetary stability, but it's about how does it impact positively on the life of our people. And I want to think that as we go on in this interview, all these issues will be unfolded. Thank you.
Governor, it's a good one that you started from that point, and let's take it from there, because I was at the Central Bank when you read out your vision. Immediately, you came in as a Central Bank governor, and I remembered vividly, you said, we want to pursue a people's central bank, a people-oriented central bank. Do you think that after you made that speech, and after you gave out your vision, a series of attacks came? Perhaps people did not want you to have a people's central bank. What do you think?
You see, well, one thing about being in leadership position is that it's not about popularity contest. It's about doing what you think is right, and in this case, what we think is right for our people. Okay. Unfortunately, the shock happened, but of course, I must say that the credence or the credit must go to the President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, President Muhammadu Buhari, because he set the tone to the extent that anytime there's a briefing, okay, of course, naturally there must be a briefing, and when I go into a briefing, the issue will be, oh, there is this shock, there is a run on the reserve of the country, and of course, it started by saying, okay, what are you importing? Okay, even if you must adjust the value of your currency, the issue is that the adjustment is coming about because there is a lot of imports, right? You are spending money on imports more than you are receiving. So what are you really importing? Can you go take a look at the items you are importing? Are those items the kind of goods or products that can be produced in the country? If they are, then why waste foreign exchange on them? So those are some of the issues that, and I said it's not about a popularity context, it's about taking a decision that you think is bold, strong, and in the interest of the country.
Governor, you would know that at the time you were very unpopular. I don't know if now it's changing. Perhaps you tell me if it's changing, because when you came in and when the economy especially was nosediving, we were in a recession, all hands were pointing at you and the Central Bank of Nigeria. I wondered how you slept at night, if at all you slept. Because a lot of Nigerians were like, oh, Godwin Emefiele, his policies are stringent. They are not helping the economy. What's your reaction? You were unpopular at the time.
Well,
perhaps still.
Well, the point is this, that we have to remain focused. We just have to, like I said, everything that we do, the interest of Nigerians must be at the heart. See, there was a time in this country, and I will go straight into the issues. There was a time in this country, the textile industry was the second largest employer of labor after the public service. What happened to all those textile industries? In Lagos, is it Ikorodu? Is it, if you look at between Antony Village and Mile 2, left and right side of that express road used to have textile companies adorning the both sides of those roads. Is it in Kano? Is it in Kaduna? What that meant is that they were creating jobs for people. Not just direct jobs for the employers, but you have people who were cooking and all that. But what happened? We exported jobs and imported poverty to our country. That's what we're saying. And we felt there was a need to reverse that. Begin to create jobs for our people. Do you understand? I go back again. There was a time in this country, about the 50s and 60s, when Nigeria was the largest producer and indeed exporter of palm oil. Okay? What happened? Because we found oil, we abandoned them. We hear about countries coming to Nigeria, taking our palm fruits, and they grew our palm fruits, and today those countries, two of them put together, are the largest importers and exporters of palm oil in the world. Nigeria imports palm oil from those countries. What we did by that is that we lost jobs for our people. We had opportunity to take those industries from palm plantation into industries that will produce them, refine them, and then improve our level of value addition. We lost those opportunities. Now, see, I grew up hearing about Abakaliki rice. And I have been to practically all parts of the country. We did that last year. At a time when, after President went and launched the rice program in Kebbi State. This country is endowed. This country is endowed with land, with vegetation, with everything. We had no business importing rice. Today, just within 2 years, we are almost becoming self-sufficient in rice. Indeed, how much has that cost us? We have only spent we have just spent just about 43 billion naira under the Anchor Bora program, together with other private sector-led initiatives under even just rice. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yes.
And we are almost becoming self-sufficient in rice. And that is the way the president said, look, shouldn't just be about rice. It should be about other products. Go back to palm kernel, palm oil, go back to groundnut, go back to cocoa, and let's see how we can provide financing that will catalyze these industries back to life, create jobs for our people, and that is the journey we're on.
Now that brings me to the issue of the 41 items, because there was also, we were called at that time to say, oh, 41 items, a ban on access to Forex for the 41 items. Do you think that policy has been so far successful?
I want to say it very clearly that it has been a tremendous success, even beyond our expectation. Now, one thing is that when policies like this are introduced, of course, there are going to be gains, and there are going to be those who are going to gain from it and those who are going to lose out of it. But I'm happy that we have seen more gains than losses in this. Like I said, it's not an easy thing to come out very boldly. And let me say this again. When the story about not having forex to import some of these items came about, we did consult several people. There were a few people I consulted in Lagos. I said, look, we needed to look at some of these things. Say, man, that if you go ahead and restrict these items, restrict the importation of, restrict allocation of forex to these people will fight you. And I said, oh, really, they will fight me? I said, no problem. So from that standpoint, it was a very, very difficult decision. We knew what we went through would come, and we were prepared for it. And that's why I say that all the credits go to Mr. President, because in the course of the briefings, and I said, Mr. President, you asked me last week that why should we spend forex on items that we can produce in the country? And I didn't give an answer, and you said, well, take a look at some of the items and let's talk about it. And when we spoke about a couple of them, of course, he said, it's your decision. If you don't have forex and these items are being imported and they can be produced in the country, then it's your decision to know what to do. And we drew up the list. And after I drew up the list, and I continued on the process of consulting people, and of course did also consult with him. And he said, if I were you, I would go ahead. Yeah, if I were you, I would go ahead, because you don't have forex for these items. For about 3 weeks, I held on to the list. And we kept talking about it. Not only with him, but with various other stakeholders. But of course, what came to my mind that I would never forget about it is, at a point, yes, I was scared to restrict these items from forex allocation. But the last word I got from the leader is, why haven't you started this program of restricting them from forex? And I said, sir, I'm very scared because these people are going to fight me. He said, oh, really? They will fight you? If they fight you, it means they fight Nigeria. Go ahead. For me, that was the tonic I needed to say, this journey must start. And that's how we started the journey. And I'm happy that the results are there for everybody to see. Now, when I keep talking about it, we were castigated to the point where the economists got out and said, look, we didn't even know what we were doing, to the point where we went into a room and we were just thinking of various items, and that we're not even ashamed to even pick common toothpick. And I will give you an example. Toothpick can be produced in a factory that is less than 1/8 the size of this office. Right? What does it take? Just bamboo sticks. But today, in Ogun State, in Abuja, we have young school leavers. I mean, young school leavers, after NYSC, just acquired the machine with less than $50,000. And today they are producing toothpick. Those toothpick that we are producing in Nigeria today is of a better quality, stronger, and cheaper than the imported alternative. That is creating jobs, not only for themselves, they're creating jobs for other people. I go back to cassava. Nigeria is today the largest producer of cassava. One of the products that can come out of cassava is starch and glucose. We were spending millions, tens of millions of dollars importing starch and glucose into Nigeria, whereas we have very many companies that could produce starch and glucose in Nigeria. These companies became moribund, almost dead. And I give you an example, to the point where these companies will go to those multinational companies that need starch and glucose for their pharmaceutical formulations. They will tell them, we will come back to you to buy your starch when our stocks run down. Their stocks never ran down. It was after the introduction of this restriction on forex that the likes of Nestle, Unilever, today that company called Saltry, somewhere in Oyo State, today the orders that they have to produce starch and glucose, they can't meet it. They have created jobs for people. That company and many others have come back to life. Those are some of the few examples. Am I going to tell you about rice? Do you know how many millions of, how many thousands of farmers have become millionaires as a result of we adopting the Anchor program? You can go for yourself to different parts of the country. There is not about us going around. You are a television or a broadcast company. Go for yourself and see. So you can tell the success of this program.
How about, what would you tell those that say there's not so much inclusion, especially for the Anchor's Borrowers program in the area of rice, and that the local rice is still more expensive than the imported rice?
See, the point you need to understand is this, that there are a couple of issues bordering on infrastructure. Those countries where they import them from, first of all, those rice that have been imported are substandard rice. They are poisoned rice. They are rice that have been preserved with chemical. Those rice are over 5 to 7 years old. And what happened is that the leader of that country at the time of campaign, what he did was went and bought large stocks of rice, do you understand, and felt that at some point that it would be exported for the country. And what happened? It so happened that because the rice was getting bad, they had to ship them out at low prices. So you are talking about rice that is, one, poisoned, two, coming at substandard prices, below cost, just for them to get out of the situation. That is why you will find that the rice is cheaper. But what do we need to do? We only need to protect our own farmers. And that's why when the program on rice started, right, we found out that the farmers were cultivating with substandard seedlings. We found out the farmers had no fertilizers. We found out that the herbicides that were being used were also of substandard. They hadn't been taught by agricultural extension workers as to how do they space the planting of the seedlings so that the yield can be more. At that time, before this program started, the yield per hectare of rice was less than 2 tons per hectare. Today, because under the Borrowers program, the Bank of Agric, the NERSAL, and the institutions that we work with, we insist that they are not going to take the entire amount of the loan and give to the farmers. They buy the real correct seedlings. Is it Faro 45 or Faro 55? They buy those seedlings that have high yield capacity. They ensure that there is fertilizer, and the fertilizer indeed, under the presidential initiative on fertilizer, which President Buhari agreed with the Moroccan government, Nigeria now has blending plants that now blend fertilizer. So it's not about importing substandard fertilizer, import real fertilizer. We collect this fertilizer and we give it to the farmers. We make sure that people produce or import high quality herbicides that will be used. With this input, the amount we give to the farmers is just for them to buy some fuel to run their generators, which they pump water into their farms, particularly during the dry season. The yield has moved up from less than 2 tons per hectare in some places to Jigawa. Jigawa got 8 tons per hectare. Dangote is on a trip now because he's also going into rice production as well as milling. He is importing some seedlings from abroad where the yield will be over 10 tons per hectare. There is no how you can compare the yield under 10 tons per hectare and the yield under 2 tons per hectare. The cost of production under a 2 ton per hectare arrangement is certainly almost 5 times higher than the cost under a yield where you have 10 tons per hectare. So naturally you will find that the price of our rice will become cheaper, and it has become very, very competitive at this time. But again, we still need to make sure as government that we protect them, protect our farmers. And I'll give you an example. In 2014, the Thai Rice Exporters Association came out with their data. They said in 2014, Nigeria imported 1.3 million metric tons of rice from them. that Republic of Benin imported slightly below 1 million metric tons. After this program, the program for FX restriction on rice came about, in 2016, what was imported into Nigeria was less than 100,000 metric tons, right? But we find that what was exported through the Republic of Benin went up. Why did it go up? Because they felt the route to route the rice through the border, through Benin, right, was more accessible for them. So what do? We need to make sure that we protect and block, because the Republic of Benin cannot be importing rice that even China cannot even consume. That country's population cannot consume the kind of rice, because in the Republic of Benin, they consume only white rice. They do not consume parboiled rice. But yet, they import parboiled rice, which will through the route into Nigeria. And that's why government is already looking at the possibility of looking at the Badagry Agreement that was signed with that country to make sure that they do not import through their country goods that will end up in Nigeria. Because we need to protect our people. We need to protect our farmers. We need to protect those who have invested hundreds and millions of dollars to produce goods that we need to consume in our country, using our own local inputs to produce them. That will be the next set of battle we're going to fight, and I can assure you we will win that battle.
What actually also now gave you the courage to checkmate the volatility in the FX markets? Especially the BDC, the Bureau de Change Operators, our foreign exchange market. Now we have various segments, the I&E window, NAFEX and all of that. What gave you the courage? Because there was so much volatility. Naira to $1 was, at the time in this country, 500 Naira. And this was a currency that was around 150, 155. At the time, the highest we saw was 165 to $1. And at that time, 500 Naira to $1, everybody was crying. But now, there seems to be relative stability. But a lot of people are saying, can we still also go back to the days of $1 to perhaps 200 Naira to the dollar? What do you have to say about that?
Well, thank you very much, Nancy. You know, again, these are part of the challenges of policy making. Like I said earlier, we came from an arrangement where for 5 straight years, from 2009 to 2014, the price of crude averaged $110 per barrel. The price for 5 straight years. Indeed, in 2008, the country's reserve, September precisely, was about $62 billion. So at that time, we had everything that we needed. There was not going to be anything like a currency crisis or foreign exchange crisis and the rest of them. In fact, banks were begging customers to come buy Forex, but nobody wanted Forex because they felt we had more than enough and that I can easily work. Why should I be in a hurry to go and buy Forex when I know that anytime I need, I can always get it because the reserve was robust? That was what happened during those periods. And we had a lot more opportunity during the 5-year period from 2009 to 2014 to build reserve. But I don't want to go through the story about what did we do. But in fact, what happened from 2008 when reserve was 62, we found that reserve dropped. Even before the crisis, reserve dropped to as low as 40 billion in January 2014. In June 2014, when I took over, reserve had dropped to about 37. And by around August, the crisis started. The global shock started. The price of crude dropped from as high as $120 per barrel to February 2016 to as low as $28 per barrel. You had lost over 70% in price of crude. The country, unfortunately, is an import-dependent country. Imports were rising, revenue from exports were dropping, and so we didn't have a choice but to face a currency crisis. We didn't have a choice but to be confronted by the need to adjust our currency. And that was why we had to adjust the currency at that time. From 155, we moved on to 168. And of course, we kept asking friends, if we adjusted it, what will encourage our other stakeholders, our foreign investor communities to come. Oh, some of them said, well, if we can adjust at 180, 185, we'll be fine. And we went ahead and adjusted to 197. And we went back, and it didn't happen the way we thought it was going to happen. And having adjusted to 197, and that was why, like I said, I will receive advice, and people said, if you've adjusted price, then, and it wasn't working, then why can't you look at demand and supply management? So we embarked on demand management, which had to do with the whole idea about looking at what are the items that we can produce locally rather than import them, right? And of course, dovetailed into the 41 items issues. And luckily, we've been able to really stem the demand. And I was given a lecture about 3 weeks ago, and we found out that the import had dropped from as high as $5.5 billion monthly, sometime in 2013, 2014, to, as we speak, $1.9 billion. It is because we have all managed to tighten our waist belts, and then we are living with the reality that there isn't enough for it, and for that reason, that we needed to look at local substitutes and local alternatives, which is the reason I just told you earlier that the policy on 41 items has worked. Now, the next item had to do with going to supply management. What do we do to stimulate supply? We looked at different options and all that. And in the middle of this, we still saw, of course, the external shocks were still going on. So we didn't have a choice but to say, okay, fine, how do we begin a program that will encourage an appreciation in the currency? We started looking at, again, why would people go to the black market and create pressure there, or the parallel market and create pressure there? We found out that people who just simply wanted to travel, $500, $1,000, they went to their banks, and the banks expelled them, told them they didn't have forex to sell to them. People who had small businesses want forex to conduct their business. The banks expelled them. People who wanted to pay school fees for their children, because it is their choice to do whatever they wanted to do, didn't have the option, but they were expelled by the banks. Whereas it is the sole responsibility of the banks, since I knew banking, right? It is sole responsibility of the banks to provide foreign exchange for anybody, whether you are an individual or a company. But of course, unfortunately, the banks, not now, that hadn't happened for several years, the banks shied away from this responsibility. They felt that allocating foreign exchange to their corporate customers was more important than allocating forex to even the individual small business that came into their banking halls. And we said no, that would not happen. And that was how we began the process to say, listen, banks, it is your responsibility to make sure that if Nancy wants to travel abroad, he should be able to walk into your teller point and buy forex to travel. If Nancy wants to pay school fees, right, it is your responsibility to find it. If there are small people who have small businesses that need forex, it is your responsibility to provide the forex. And we say, okay, we would allocate the forex to you, but you must sell it to those set of people. And that was how we advertised. We said, look, if you want to travel abroad, please don't go to the parallel market to buy dollar at 500. Come down to your bank and buy, because we made sure that the banks will have forex to sell to you. So if you were me now, if you were in their shoes, instead of going to the market and buy it at 500, and somebody say we'll sell it to you at 360, of course you ran down to the person who ready to sell at 360. And that's why that market came crashing like a pack of cards. So you can see how, and I've always said it, that market is a very shallow market. Very, very shallow market. So what did we do? Pulled people who were traveling, who wanted to travel business or personal out of the black market, come buy it from the bank. Pulled people who want to pay school fees and all those small expenses, come buy it from the bank. Pull small businesses, they should be entitled to at least $20,000 per quarter. Pull them out of that market and say, banks, you must allocate forex to them.
But Governor, you did it at a time. You did it at a time when the FX reserves was not also as robust as it is right now, though it's not that robust, $34 billion. You did it at a time that the question was the sustainability, and you continue to intervene. Even as I speak, you continue to intervene in the forex market.
Yes.
The question will be that of sustainability. How long will you continue to hold it? How long will you continue to boost it?
Let me tell you this. By doing what we did, we now began to see that the people were, those important stakeholders, foreign investors, even people wanted to invest domestically, were saying at that time, the gap between the official market price and the black market was too wide. Yes. That it was creating arbitrage and all the opportunities. So when that market began to crash, it crashed from 525 and got to 360. So what we did was bridge that gap. And by bridging the gap and then ensuring that we continue to intervene, a lot more confidence was restored into the market. By restoring confidence, saying that you didn't see the kind of volatility you were seeing before any longer. You saw a stability in price. So people became a lot more confident. Okay, yeah, I think since it is stable at around 360, 365, 362, 363, I think that gap is substantially bridged and all that. So for that reason, we can begin to do business. And that's why you've seen that now we are on a journey of even building reserves, because more and more people are now bringing in their foreign currencies into the country, and what we would have spent, we are now saving it. And that's why the reserve is going up. And I can tell you, happily, as at yesterday, the reserve has hit $35 billion.
Okay. From
$23 billion October 2016.
How much sense does it make that our budget is predicated now on 305 naira to $1 when it's 360?
No. The market, the point is this. There is a budget. It's a budget price, which is anchored on so many parameters. Do you understand? But of course, if the forex is eventually deployed at a price higher than 305, the difference, which is an FX gain, also goes to the government, and it is shared. So it's not necessarily that it's going to be deployed at 305.
Governor, let's talk about the banks. The almighty banks in Nigeria, which you also came from. There's this widely held view that there are no stringent penalties for insider abuse in the banks. I've heard you in different forums speak, even at the different MPCs, some of us ask questions that even some of your policies that the banks are not carrying it to fruition. Some of the intervention funds pass through the DMBs, even the MFBs. I do know in one bankers committee, that was in July or so, the bankers committee of July did come together to say, oh, we have billions of naira for MSMEs. Yet we are not seeing these banks play the financial intermediary role. What's your view about this? The penalties from the central bank of Nigeria?
It's not about politics. It's not about penalties. We must know that the banks are set up to meet certain purposes. The banks are meant to be intermediaries. The banks are an important sector that will help drive growth. And I can tell you it's easy to destroy, but it's not easy to build. It's not about, you don't have to close a bank for you to send signals. It's a matter of style. In the past, we've closed banks, but yet it still has not stopped what you're calling the sharp practices. But the point for me is this: at a time when you have a weak economy, an economy that is as weak as it is, and all of us are working very hard to see to how we can revive it, and the banking industry is just at a tipping edge. It is not in your interest to create more banking or financial system stability problems or crisis in the system. So when you close a bank, those that you deal with, those you punish are depositors, not shareholders. Because for instance, there's one of the banks that we recently intervened in. That bank, shareholders' funds is let me put it bluntly, negative, which means shareholders don't have monies again in that bank. Whereas depositors, there are over 5 million customers in that bank. Do you understand? So what would I, the governor, what would government tell 5 million people at a time when we are grappling to get the economy back on its feet? What would we tell them if they lost their deposits? It's not as simple as saying, oh, NDIC will pay them. How much does NDIC pay? NDIC pays 500,000
naira.
Naira, whereas somebody may have up to 5, 10, 50 million naira. So what do we explain to them? So what we're trying to do is say, look, how do we manage the institution in a way that one, they remain alive, and two, they play the role they're supposed to play. Now, coming back to the issue of, are they playing the roles? They do not have a choice but to play the role they are supposed to play. And that is what we're trying to see to it.
Do you think you are more understanding since you came from that sector?
No. It has nothing to do with...
That you are not as strict with them?
No, it's not. It has nothing to do with being strict. And we have taken some tough measures, for instance. Some banks, we've imposed billions of naira sanctions on them.
Have they been paying that?
They have paid. We debit them straight for those billions. But you know, you don't want to subject all this to publicity and grandstanding that will eventually weaken those institutions and lead to their demise. So we have our own approach towards sanctioning erring institutions and erring staff. But you don't want to do something that will create systemic crisis and ultimately worsen the economic situation that we are in. That's basically the idea here. Now, that we are trying to make sure that they perform their roles. But of course, they will perform those roles within acceptable, what I call acceptable risk acceptance criteria. Is it, in fact, you'll be breaking the law. A bank will be breaking the law if it lends money without collateral. Unless it is a big multinational that everybody knows that you can lend what is called based on cash flow. Do you understand? So the point is, what is the kind of collateral that these customers have to offer to secure the loan? Now, if you don't have collateral, then we will have to look at the kind of arrangements that central bank is putting in place under the Anchor Borrower program, under those MSMEs, where we say, look, you don't have to loan money to somebody who wants 50,000 and take collateral, somebody who wants to take 100,000, market 100,000. You don't need collateral for all those. And that's what we are beginning to do through our own priority, identify priority sectors and say, look, let us support some of these people without taking collateral. For instance, under the Anchor Borrower program, there's nothing like collateral. We just say, we have their BVN, we have taken their data, we know where they are, we have mapped out their land, and these people, they are paying. In any case, I've heard about saying they are not paying. That is not true. You don't give somebody who is into farming a 3-month loan. You need to give that loan for an extended period of about 3 to 5 years so that he can turn that money over, so that in 5 years when you're asking for the money, he can easily pay you back. But the important thing is this: by doing that, you've empowered him. You've given him money. You've given him seedlings. You've given him fertilizer. And with that, he's able to turn over that money, and you have improved his wealth in the community. Those are the people that truly need our attention. And that is why the central bank, through its various interventions, are looking at those vulnerable people, those weak people, and putting in place special arrangements where they can access credit without necessarily providing collateral.
But there is still a problem of accessing those credits. It's still very difficult, Governor. Even the MFBs, the microfinance banks, those people go to those categories of banks, and yet they are giving interest rates of 25, 28, 30%. They are told to bring collateral. I understand there's now what we call the collateral registry. As a woman, I can take my jewelry because I don't have access to land. I take my jewelry, I go put there as collaterals. But what you're just saying right now, that for some facilities you don't need a collateral. People don't know that, and it's difficult.
I'm at this opportunity to say that facilities as small as 50,000, 100,000, you truly don't need collateral. In fact, these are the people who are very vulnerable, and we just have to trust and believe that they will take the money. In any case, somebody takes 50,000 and 100,000. He's so weak that when you intimidate him, he's going to pay back your loan. Those are the weak people along the chain. Okay? That, let me say that I have heard about microfinance or whatever, MFBs lending money at 5% flat or 10% flat and the rest of them. I'm sure those MFBs are not under our program. Any MFB that is under our own program cannot loan money for these small businesses at more than 9%, because we insist on it, and we insist by telling our development finance officers that are in every branch of Central Bank of Nigeria all over the country to go around, visit them, or even interview or receive questionnaires, surveys from people, or even protest letters. Is it protest letters you call them? From these people who are protesting. And if you find an MFB or an institution, a bank that is under our own program, on our intervention program, lending those monies to those people at higher than 90%, 9%, we take them off our program and we sanction those institutions.
Governor, let me ask you this question. How much political capital do you have to carry out your policies? Political capital, because
I don't understand what you mean by political capital, because I'm not a politician. I am here to carry out my banking jobs and responsibilities. What is uppermost in my mind is Nigeria. What is uppermost in my mind? Nigerians. I sleep, I wake up, I think about how can this country, how can we improve the lot of this country, where population grows at an annual rate of 3%. Nancy, what I'm saying is today, 2017, where Nigeria's population is being projected at about 150 million people, growing at 3% means that in the year 2020, Nigeria will be 205 million people. By the year 2050,
will be the
Nigeria
third.
Will be a population of 450
million people. The third largest.
Now, the third largest populated country
in the world. Yes.
What do we? I sleep, I wake up, I fear that we must do something, and that is what kicks me up from my bed. And I said, what can we do? The interest of Nigerians must be uppermost in our heart, and that is what we must do. Otherwise, if we don't, I don't want to predict what will happen.
So do you think that people understand Emefiele? Do people understand you?
I don't know whether
do I understand you? Do Nigerians understand you?
I really don't know, but you know, they will have to tell by themselves whether or not they understand. But I think what we're trying to do is, like I said, trying to understand us should not be about us getting into publicity bliss, but it's about doing the work and let the results show. Unfortunately, in the last 2.5 years, we've been faced by these problems. But I thank God that we're at this point where, with the support of everybody, right, we're beginning to see ourselves out of it. Indeed, we have seen ourselves out of it. We only need to continue to push ourselves. So now that the results are beginning to show, the people will tell whether or not what kind of impression they have about this person and all that. So it's not about me knowing what people feel or how people feel about me, but it is the work that we do that will speak for us.
Does it bother you that people say sometimes a lot of bad things about you, the central bank? The central bank is one institution that gets a lot of knocks. Does that bother you?
Well, I must say that as a person, sometimes when you think through it and you think about what sacrifices you're making, everything you are doing to correct what you didn't create, these were exogenous problems, external shocks, external problems. They are not problems that you created with your hand, but sometimes feel bad when you read through these things. But again, what do? All you need to do is to remain focused and seeing to it that what can you do to make sure that you pull everybody out of the problems that we have unfortunately found ourselves. And I think that's just the little thing. You get bothered sometimes, but you have to move on, because you don't cry over spilled milk. You don't cry over something you can't control. Oh. Think about what you can do, what you can control, and begin to focus on it. And I think that's the journey. I mean, that's the destination. That's all.
Now, would you want to qualify yourself as a revolutionary? Because you came in, you checkmated a lot of things, you went ahead, you cracked down even on the BDCs, you did a lot of things. So would you say you're a revolutionary in the history of central banking in Nigeria when your name is mentioned?
No. It's not about being a revolutionary. It's about sitting down and thinking about what do you think is right, and then ensuring that you do what is right, insist that what is right is done, and that is all. Whatever interpretation people give to it is not material at this time, but it is the focus in the tenacity with which you do your work. And I keep saying it, history will tell the stories later, that's all.
Let's come back to the banks a bit. Analysts have argued that the banks in Nigeria have aided corruption. What do you think about corruption? Because those monies are being kept in banks.
Well, you are very correct when analysts say that. And I want to let you know that as the central bank governor, I will not support corruption. And when people say this, we send our examiners out and they go look at the books. We can only just continue to encourage people to send us information on the basis of which we can find them. But it is not very accurate to paint everybody black, because not everybody is black. Yes, within every institution you could find elements of this, but I am not the type of person that want to paint everybody black. I would love to have the proof on the basis of which we pick the bad eggs out and then we deal with them. And I repeat, I do not support corruption. I do not support any element of it, but we would like to have information that would help us in identifying elements of corruption so we can deal with them.
When will interest rates come down? Can you tell me categorically? Because inflation has been trending downwards. The trending down of inflation, is it sufficiently enough now for the interest rate reduction? Because you promised us that in your first speech, I want to pursue a people-centered central bank, interest rate reduction. When are Nigerians going to say it? Because that is the anchor rate, the benchmark that will set the pace for other rates to come down.
Well, thank you very much. I'm happy that you're saying it, that even in my vision, my vision statement, you saw it that I said.
You said it clearly.
At some point,
yes,
that interest rate must come down.
Yes.
But you see, it's about what are the macroeconomic variables? Do they point to that direction? Now, if we are faced by exogenous shocks that has resulted in rising unemployment, that has resulted in a badly depreciating exchange rate, that has resulted in inflation going up very badly, right? What do you do? In fact, growth, right? GDP has decelerated so badly. Whereas what people want, what people will use as basis to conclude that an economy is prosperous is low inflation, low interest rate, low exchange rate, and high and increasing growth levels and all that. Whereas what you'll find, I've just enumerated 4 macroeconomic parameters. In Nigeria, between 2014, 2015, 16, 17, all these are pointing negatively. And that's why people say we are in we're in stagflation,
yeah,
resulting in recession that could even lead to even worse things. And so it's like in chemistry, where people call, you have various, chemical items,
yes,
chemical
yes,
reagents you put in a chemical process, right? And you are trying to achieve what is called an endpoint that is good, right? So you will need to balance the various factors, because you want a strong exchange rate if you can have it. You want a low interest rate if you can have it. You want inflation to go down if you can have it. But economists will tell you that interest rate, exchange rate, and inflation and interest rate move in inverse directions. So How do you therefore apply yourself, given the tools that you have at your hand, to say, how can you achieve a balance that takes you toward prosperity and growth? That is the point. Now, so we got to a point where even central bank itself could not even meet its targeted inflation rate. It targeted between 6 and 9%. By January 2016, inflation was 9%.
9.62%.
But by January 2017, inflation had hit 18.7%. Right? Exchange rate had trended towards 500. These were not good signs. Growth was negative 2.3% during the third quarter of 2016. These were not negative signs. Faced by this, what do you do? Now, we came out in central bank with a study that where the conclusion was that if inflation trends above 12%, right, there is nothing you will do. It's an acceptable result of a research. Nothing you will do, growth cannot happen. And if that is the situation, notwithstanding the fact that it is my interest, everybody's interest that interest rate should come down, you don't have any choice but to think of, how do I rein in inflation? Look at what we have done. We're trying to say, bring inflation down, because that is very important. Inflation is a killer in any economy. How did that inflation move from 9% to 18.7% within a year? We did currency adjustment. Our currency was adjusted because we're a heavily import-dependent economy.
Imports.
Do you understand? Imports became more expensive. Two, we adjusted the price of petroleum products from, is it 86 naira to 145 naira per liter. That alone is a killer. Because what you find by increasing the price of petrol, and I'll give you that analogy so that you understand how the increase in price of petrol, do you understand, was a major killer that accelerated the inflation in the country. Imagine that you have in Jigawa State tomatoes, a truck of tomatoes. The transporter, because price of petrol moved up by almost 68%, that transporter increases the price of his transportation from Jigawa to K2 in Lagos. In fact, say to Abuja, right? Increased by 70%. When that tomatoes gets to, say, Wuse market, right? It is offloaded. When it's offloaded, somebody comes there to buy maybe 5 baskets, yes. 3 baskets. The woman that is going to sell that tomatoes increase the price of his tomatoes by about 68%. She carries that tomatoes because she lives in Maraba and Nyanya. She carries that tomatoes from Wuse market and goes to Maraba and Nyanya. It gets to Nyanya. In fact, the transportation cost increases from Wuse to Maraba by 68%. That is 3 legs already. Yeah? She gets to Maraba or Nyanya market, where she's selling it in 50 naira, 100 naira, 500 naira for the person who wants to buy. That person also increases the price by 68%. That is just by adjusting the price of petrol by 68%. You can see the multiplier effect on 4 legs. So that's why we saw the rate of acceleration in inflation. And we felt that something must be done. If we do not stem it, and it continues this way, it will be a killer, and you can never achieve the kind of growth that you're looking for. So that's why Monetary Policy Committee said, you know what? The one way we must rein in on inflation by pursuing our price and monetary stability objectives. And to do so meant that we needed to rein in inflation. Rein in inflation meant that you need to adopt a sort of tight monetary policy. And adopting a tight monetary policy meant that interest rate couldn't just come down now. Okay? While doing that, we were focusing also on the exchange rate. And luckily, we've been able to tame it down to a level where we can say there's a relative level of stability right now. And I can tell you, with the way we're going, building reserves trending at 35, I'm sure by the end of this year, with what we're seeing, what we see on the table, we will close the reserve with close to about 38 to 40 billion. as we are building reserve to a point where we feel we are strong in terms of exchange rate, and then you manage to hold on to inflation and pushing it down. And like I said, I'm positive that yes, it's at 15.9 now, but I'm positive that sometime around early next year, it will trend downwards to close to about 12.
So we can hit our targets for 2018.
So once we hit those targets, I can assure everybody that interest rate will be on the downward spiral, because even at that time, when the interest rate begin to come down, because you have built your reserve, do you understand? Anybody who feels he wants to fight you, then you have enough buffer to really attack them. So the market will remain stable. I'm so optimistic about that.
Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us. I am Nancy Nnaji, and this is Moneyline with Nancy. The interview still continues as Godwin Emefiele speaks, the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria. In case you missed the first half, oh, what more can I say? But you would have to watch and listen to the man at the Apex Bank, Godwin Emefiele. Welcome again, Mr. Governor, and thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Nancy. I'm sure you had a good program so far.
Well, we tried. It's for Nigerians to speak. When will interest rates come down? Can you tell me categorically? Because inflation has been trending downwards. The trending down of inflation, is it sufficiently enough now for the interest rate reduction? Because you promised us that in your first speech, I want to pursue a people-centered central bank. Interest rate reduction. When are Nigerians going to say it? Because that is the anchor rate, the benchmark that will set the pace for other rates to come down.
Well, thank you very much. I'm happy that you're saying it, that even in my vision, my vision statement, you saw it that I said.
You said it clearly.
At some point,
yes,
that interest rate must come down.
Yes.
But you see, it's about what are the macroeconomic variables? Do they point to that direction? Now, if we are faced by exogenous shocks that has resulted in rising unemployment, that has resulted in a badly depreciating exchange rate, that has resulted in inflation going up very badly, right? What do you do? In fact, growth, right? GDP has decelerated so badly. Whereas what people want, what people will use as basis to conclude that an economy is prosperous is low inflation, low interest rate, low exchange rate, and high and increasing growth levels and all that. Whereas what you'll find, I've just enumerated 4 macroeconomic parameters. In Nigeria, between 2014, 2015, 16, 17, all these are pointing negatively. And that's why people say we are in we're in stagflation.
Stagflation, yes.
Resulting in recession that could even lead to even worse things. And so it's like in chemistry, where people call You have various chemical reagents you put in a chemical process, right? And you are trying to achieve what is called an endpoint that is good, right? So you will need to balance the various factors, because you want a strong exchange rate if you can have it. You want a low interest rate if you can have it. You want inflation to go down if you can have it. But economists will tell you that interest rate, exchange rate, and inflation and interest rate move in inverse directions. So how do you therefore apply yourself, given the tools that you have at your hand, to say, how can you achieve a balance that takes you toward prosperity and growth? That is the point. Now, so we got to a point where even central bank itself could not even meet its targeted inflation rate. It targeted between 6 and 9%. By January 2016, inflation was 9%.
9.62%.
But by January 2017, inflation had hit 18.7%. Right? Exchange rate had trended towards 500. These were not good signs. Growth was negative 2.3% during the third quarter of 2016. These were not negative signs. Faced by this, what do you do? Now, we came out in central bank with a study that where the conclusion was that if inflation trends above 12%, right, there is nothing you will do. It's an acceptable result of a research. Nothing you will do, growth cannot happen. And if that is the situation, notwithstanding the fact that it is my interest, everybody's interest that interest rate should come down, you don't have any choice but to think of, how do I rein in inflation? Look at what we have done. We're trying to say, bring inflation down, because that is very important. Inflation is a killer in any economy. How did that inflation move from 9% to 18.7% within a year? We did currency adjustment. Our currency was adjusted because we're a heavily import-dependent economy.
Imports.
You understand? Imports became more expensive. Two, we adjusted the price of petroleum products from, is it 86 naira to 145 naira per liter. That alone is a killer. Because what you find by increasing the price of petrol, and I'll give you that analogy so that you understand how the increase in price of petrol, do you understand, was a major killer that accelerated the inflation in the country. Imagine that you have in Jigawa State tomatoes, a truck of tomatoes. The transporter, because price of petrol moved up by almost 68%, that transporter increases the price of his transportation from Jigawa to K2 in Lagos. In fact, say to Abuja, right? Increased by 70%. When that tomatoes gets to, say, Wuse market, right? It is offloaded. When it's offloaded, somebody comes there to buy maybe 5 baskets, 3 baskets. The woman that is going to sell that tomatoes increase the price of his tomatoes by about 68%. She carries that tomatoes because she lives in Maraba and Nyanya. She carries that tomatoes from Wuse market and goes to Maraba and Nyanya. He gets to Nyanya. In fact, the transportation cost increases from Wuse to Maraba by 68%. That is 3 legs already. Yeah? She gets to Maraba or Nyanya market, where she's selling it in 50 naira, 100 naira, 500 naira for the person who wants to buy. That person also increases the price by 68%. That is just by adjusting the price of petrol by 68%. You can see the multiplier effect on 4 legs. So that's why we saw the rate of acceleration in inflation. And we felt that something must be done. If we do not stem it, and it continues this way, it will be a killer, and you can never achieve the kind of growth that you're looking for. So that's why Monetary Policy Committee said, you know what? The one way we must rein in on inflation by pursuing our price and monetary stability objectives. And to do so meant that we needed to rein in inflation. Rein in inflation meant that you need to adopt a sort of tight monetary policy And adopting a tight monetary policy meant that interest rate couldn't just come down now. Okay? While doing that, we were focusing also on the exchange rate. And luckily, we've been able to tame it down to a level where we can say there's a relative level of stability right now. And I can tell you, with the way we're going, building reserves trending at 35, I'm sure by the end of this year, with what we're seeing, what we see on the table, we will close the reserve with close to about 38 to 40 billion. As we are building reserve to a point where we feel we are strong in terms of exchange rate, and then you manage to hold on to inflation and pushing it down. And like I said, I'm positive that yes, it's at 15.9 now, but I'm positive that sometime around early next year, it will trend downwards to close to about 12.
So we can hit our targets for 2018.
So once we hit those targets, I can assure everybody that interest rate will be on the downward spiral, because even at that time, when the interest rate begin to come down, because you have built your reserve, do you understand? Anybody who feels he wants to fight you, then you have enough buffer to really attack them. So the market will remain stable. I'm so optimistic about that.
How are you optimistic about the current state of the Nigerian economy? How do you feel about the current state?
I am very happy and optimistic that we are out, and I make bold to say we are out of the recession. And bet, if you look at a country that, I repeat, where population grows at 3%,
yeah,
the traditional level of growth that this country is used to, so that people can begin to say, yeah, this growth is reflecting positively in our lives. That level of growth would have to get to close to about 6% to 7%, which are traditional levels. I can understand when people come into that and say, oh, yeah, they say we're out of recession, but we're not feeling it. It's a process. It's a process. If the level where everybody will feel it positively is where the rate of growth is not just surpassing population growth. The rate of growth that we are pushing is at least twice. So we must get to close to 6% growth before we can say we are totally out. But I can say that is a good sign that we are out. And what do we all need to do as policymakers? Because you are out, you need to continue to push aggressively. Don't do anything that will upset the positive you've seen now. Just continue on this trajectory. We'll be there, and I'm so optimistic we'll be there.
Governor, your optimism, I share in it too. But that we're out of recession is basically because all prices are also trending upwards. 63 US dollars.
I don't agree with you.
You don't want to agree with me?
No, I don't agree with you.
Okay, why?
A lot is being done in the agricultural sector. A lot is being done in the manufacturing sector. A lot is being done in the SME as well as even the Anchor Borough program sector. It has not entirely permeated.
Okay.
Do you understand?
Because the non-oil sector is still showing signs of contraction.
No. See, it is good enough that we're seeing that the oil is stabilizing at higher level. But I do not want to subscribe to the fact that it is because it's oil. Other things have been done in the agri sector. Other things have been done in the manufacturing sector. Other things have been done in the services sector. So we are going to get there. But you see, like I said earlier, the rate at which the progress or effect of policy, reaches everybody, the rate of permeation it goes gradually and gradually and gradually. It's not possible that you just go from negative straight to 6% growth. It takes a process. And that process is what we are on. We only want to continue to appeal for people's understanding and patience. But I'm so optimistic that doing what we're doing right now, we would get there.
Governor, what would you say to people that are of the view that the central bank has meddled into a lot of things it's not supposed to do? The traditional or your core responsibility is fighting inflation, price stability.
That's what I told you.
Going into power, aviation.
Nancy, I told you from the onset that we are going to be a people-centered central bank. And there is no how a central bank in an emerging market or a developing economy will sit and say it is just pursuing price and monetary stability, inflation, interest, and rate. You must pursue development finance. And Section 31 of our Act gives us the power to pursue development finance. And any right-thinking central bank not just about in a developing economy, faced by the shocks that we have faced, cannot sit idle and say, I want to focus on the traditional things and allow other things to be deteriorating when you know you can play a role that can see to turning the table positively. That's what we're doing, and there's no regrets about it, because our act gives us the power to do what we're doing.
So we'll continue to see perhaps interventions, because a lot of people, if they have problems in any sector, oh, central bank should give us money.
It's
oh,
not,
central bank should give us funds.
No, and that's how we interrupt. It's not about, we will not intervene anyhow, anywhere. But we will intervene in sectors that we feel are priority, in sectors that we think will complement the efforts of monetary policy to take decisions that will take this country to higher levels, that will complement and ensure that we grow the economy. Complement monetary policy to the point where Nigerians will say that our lives are better. Do you understand? Now, so what are we doing? Acting as channels through which funds can go to priority sectors at subsidized interest rates, right, 9%, so that people can be encouraged to go to agriculture. And I can tell you, sitting boldly before you, facing the camera, that there is no agricultural business you will do, particularly at the primary level, and you take a loan at above single digit, that will do well. Okay? So that's why we're saying for now, as interest rate is higher than single digit, then we must have a way where those funds must be channeled to those sectors at those single digit interest rates. And of course, naturally, once, like I said, we're able to rein in on inflation, we have a stable exchange rate, we have built reserve buffers, and inflation comes down, because you find central bank, in fact, people won't even come to central bank to ask for 9% money, because at that point, the banks themselves will be offering loans to people at single digit. And I can tell you, it will happen in this country.
Talk to me, Governor, about some of the intervention funds. You've talked about Anchor borrowers a lot, because I also know there are other intervention funds. Even the MSMEs fund, the 220 billion naira. There's also the fund even meant for coppers, a whole lot of funds, because I get engaged with people on a daily basis, and some don't even understand that those funds are there. Some may know there are funds there, but they don't even know how to access. Can you speak to me about some of these funds? Power, aviation? And
I mean, basically, we're ramping down power and aviation,
okay,
because that was done before I got to central bank. We're just ramping down on those ones. But we're looking at any program. You can see what's left after that will be MSME, which is standard and microfinance, microcredit, and agric, or commercial agricultural credit scheme, agricultural credit guarantee scheme, anchor borrower programs, or real sector support facility.
Yeah.
Those are all meant, one, real sector to support new industries, people who want to build new factories that we think will contribute to growth. Like, for instance, I was at a session where I said, look, if we find companies, right, who, for instance, before now, were producing in Nigeria, but they closed down and moved their factories to other countries. Do you understand? And they want to come back, and they need our help. We say, we will count us that we will support you to come back. And Unilever is a good example. Unilever, in around the late 90s or early 2000s, they were producing butter and margarine here in Nigeria. I, as a credit analyst, visited their factory at Agbara then. They were producing it. But suddenly, because of certain problems, they moved the plant to another country. I don't want to call the name of the country, in West Africa. And that is a country whose population is not even up to the population of Ogun State. That's where they moved the plant to, just because maybe they felt that there were other benefits. And we're saying, no, come back. Because we're saying you cannot import margarine from that country and spend our foreign exchange for that. Because what do you think to produce margarine? Palm oil. So you can buy palm oil, refine it, and it becomes margarine, blue band margarine. And I'm happy that they've decided to reopen that factory at Agbara, and they'll be, and I'll by the special grace of God, I'll be at the launching of that factory in Agbara. So we're saying our real sector support facility will be for countries or companies or industries that want to really grow their economy, reduce the import dependency, and then help us conserve our reserve. Once we see through it that the ultimate is to help us conserve our reserve, improve import, reduce import dependency, we will support that project. Then the other set of projects will be other agriculture, the agri, which is what we think. And there is no country, no government in the world that ignores agriculture that succeeds. And that is why we're saying we will support government. We will support the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development. We will work with the bank to see to it that whatever needed to be done to finance agriculture, in fact, make agriculture business profitable so that more and more people can go into it, we would go for it.
How about the ADDS program, isn't it, that was launched sometime?
Yeah, that's accelerated agricultural development scheme.
You had with some state governors.
That is a program that is meant to create about 10,000 jobs in each of the states.
How far is it going now?
Well, I would say we're making some progress. I'm not going to pretend to you a few hurdles. We're trying to cross those hurdles, and I believe once we cross those hurdles, we will be there.
I watched President Macron of France, that's the president of France. In one of his interviews, he said that it is good to have someone that tells you the truth. And if you have someone that tells you the truth, it's very vital. Someone at home telling you the truth. The question is, do you have people around you that tell you the truth and how things are, and not perhaps caged in this wonderful office, AC, everything at your beck and call? Do you have people that tell you the truth?
I have so many people who tell me the truth, and very bluntly too. So many. And you know, people say that it's like only the truth will set you free. And it is only the truth in this case that takes you to the destination. When people tell you the truth, it sets you thinking, and then that because they've told you the truth, you will come up with better solutions. It is because people have told us the truth. They have criticized us. But of course, we have also seized the opportunity to provide our own perspectives to certain issues. And that's how, that's the reason we are making the kind of progress that we are making right now. People sometimes think they're trying to tell you the truth from their own standpoint, but without understanding the whole story, without understanding where you are coming from. And with time, by the time they give you an opportunity to explain where you are coming from, they begin to say, oh, we didn't know this is where you are coming from. So telling yourself the truth is both ways. Some may say they are telling you bluntly, but they are coming from a position where they don't have the full information. And when you have engagement with people who say they are telling you the truth, you are able to espouse your own ideas as well, where you are coming from, and that is what will help everybody, including our nation. Yes, I encourage people telling me the truth, but it is not very good when people who are supposed to know the truth decide to bend it because they want to achieve certain objectives. And that is why you always seek opportunities to say, look, let's engage. And you think you are telling me what you know, I will also tell you where I'm coming from. And that's how we keep saying, before you go out to criticize, please seize the opportunity to know the whole side of the story before you go out to talk.
Do you think we now have so much understanding, especially as it concerns ECOWAS and Africa? Africa is a continent of over 1 billion people and still growing. There's this clamor for eco-currency. I know you were also in the meeting with the president. Talk to me about some of the progress, if progress indeed has been done. And will there be a time that Africa would really have a currency? Do you share that?
Well, it's not about sharing it. But it's about the fact that if our leaders came up through the ECOWAS or through the African Union to talk about that we must have economic and financial integration, then you don't have a choice but to flow along. However, in flowing along, you will need to think of what is best for your country, because it's about thinking about a competitive position, taking a competitive position. And I'd like to say that the issue about the ECOWAS currency is something that is being looked at, and Nigeria did not mince words in clearly stating where, if you want ECOWAS single currency, what are some of the things that need to be done.
Yeah.
Okay? And Nigeria is insisting that what needs to be done must be done. That if those things that need to be done are not done, then we can't make the kind of progress that they think we should make towards the single currency. And whether we like it or not, I was in the course of where we're at Niamey, we're trying to look at the size of the ECOWAS economy. The size of ECOWAS economy from GDP dollar standpoint was almost about 640 or so, right? And Nigeria's own GDP there is almost about 530. If Nigeria, out of 16, 17 countries, has a GDP of 530 out of 540 or 50 or whatever the case may be, it means you cannot ignore Nigeria. Do you understand? And that's why we're saying what we want done, what all the heads of government agreed should be done, must be done. If it is not done, we have our doubts whether that what needed to be achieved.
Governor, how financially secure and safe are Nigerian banks?
Well, thank you very much. You know, let me make it very clear that the strategic health of the banking industry is strong. Okay, banks will naturally face certain difficulties, particularly in periods of recession, on periods where the economies are not doing well. And it's not about Nigeria. We have seen weakening. We have seen weakening in balance sheets and in balance sheets of financial institutions in all parts of the world, particularly in countries that have been adversely impacted upon by the exogenous or drop in commodity prices. So Nigeria is not an exception. So naturally, we've seen some weakening in their balance sheets. We're doing everything possible to make sure that, because of the strategic position that banks play in any economy, that the strategic health remains strong. Is it in terms of liquidity ratio? Nigerian banks have good liquidity. Nigerian banks are actually, or the Nigerian banking industry is one of the heavily or most regulated industries in the world. It's not in every economy that you find regulators insisting that banks must maintain a particular percentage in liquidity ratio or a particular percentage in cash reserve ratios and the rest of them, right? Now, Nigerian banks are heavily capitalized. The best practice is that banks should have 8% as capital adequacy ratio. But what we have today is that the smallest bank is expected to have at least 10% in capital adequacy ratio, right? The national banks are supposed to have about 15%, and the international banks are supposed to have about 16% in capital adequacy ratios. So when you talk about, if for instance, the best practice is 8% in capital adequacy ratio, and a Nigerian bank that is supposed to have 10% has maybe, let's even say 9.9%. That 9.9%, even though it's below at the threshold set of 10%, is still better than the best practice of 8%. And what we do as we see a bank trending towards our own minimum threshold is that we begin to engage them. We begin to tell them, what should we do? How do they raise more capital, or how do we ensure that we restrict them to the payment to dividend payments so they can deploy more of their earnings into their business by way of retentions or retained earnings. Those are all the things we are doing. So if in capital adequacy ratio they are good, if in liquidity they are good, they are sound, to be able to meet obligations of their customers as and when they are due. And if, yes, we've seen some weakening in NPLs, and the weakening in NPLs is naturally expected. If, for instance, and I give you an example, if a bank has lent money to an oil and gas company, and the repayment is expected to be made from proceeds of the oil and gas business, and unfortunately crude price has dropped from 110 to even today at 50, then it means that the stream of cash flow that will repay that loan has weakened by at least 50%. So which means if that bank was expected to get repayment of $10 for its loan, it can only get $5 from its loan. So by that extension, you will see that there's a weakening in its NPL. So that's where the issue of weakening. But as we see that crude prices are strengthening further, right, they will naturally, their position in terms of NPL will improve. And of course, when NPLs weaken in that manner, we tell them make provisions for those NPLs. As they make provisions for those NPLs, they take them out of their earnings to make the provisions. We insist that they use those provisions to write down those loans. And as they write down the loans, right, their NPLs improve. And then when those companies begin to pay back, then they can now get write those back into their P&L. So those are the kind of things we are doing. So I do not think, and I say it very bluntly and categorically, that the strategic health of the banking industry is sound.
Okay, Governor, I have the Naira with me here. I have 1,000 Naira, 500, 200, 100 Naira, 50 Naira, 20 Naira. I couldn't get 10 Naira, 5 Naira. We'll come to that. But this is the nation's currency. And you have your signature on the nation's currency. How does it make you feel?
No, there's nothing extraordinary about that.
How does it make you feel? I can imagine perhaps when you were growing up, what your ambition was and all of that. How your parents would even feel about perhaps when you were in school and all of that. And grew to a point that the nation's currency is signed by you, central bank governor.
The only thing is that I thank God, and I really appreciate the fact that I have the honor, I have the opportunity to be in this position. And that is why, what I repeat, what kicks me up is that if I have been given this opportunity, I have to contribute. I have to see to it that those that God has given to us that we must help, those that God has said we should protect, by us being in this position, we have a responsibility to make sure that we do that. We have the responsibility to make sure that we paddle the canoe on their behalf to the extent that even though you go through some storms, you must take them from shore to shore in a way that they are happy. We have a responsibility, and we must know that as leaders we are meant to serve. And in the process of serving, we must make sure that those we are serving are happy with us. We must make sure, and the only way we can see to it that they are happy with us is that we take decisions that improve their lives, that improves their lot, so that wherever they may be, whether in the cities or in the villages, indeed more of them in the villages, that the economic well-being, financial well-being must be improved. That is one solemn pledge that I make.
Governor, do you also think that perhaps there should be more, because I've heard a lot of people complain to me, lower denominations, you go to the markets, you don't have change, 5 Naira, 10 Naira, difficult, then let alone the kobo. The kobo have disappeared. What do you have to say about that?
Well, I would say maybe it's a sort of standard of living. I don't know what kind of explanation to give to it. But the point is that are these currencies there? The coins are still there. The coins,
the 1 Naira coin.
They are still there. But you find out that people don't use them. And that is why I frown at every opportunity where I see that people do not want to use our currency. I've been involved in battles, fighting people about dollarization, and I said, no, you can't dollarize. This is our currency, it's got to be used. And that is why that is what it will continue to be.
Is there anything you think you would have done differently, looking back now, since 2014? Is there anything you think you would have done differently? Perhaps if you sleep at night, you wake up in the morning, oh, I may have done this thing differently.
I will say that we get confronted by challenges from day to day, and we deal with them. As long as your conscience tells you that the decision you have taken is the right one, it will be the right decision today, but maybe the next minute tomorrow, It may turn out not to be the absolutely correct one, but your conscience tells you that the point you took that decision, it was the right decision that you have taken in the interest of the country and the interest of the generality of Nigerians. Nothing, no regrets about it.
What has been on the seat as the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria? What has it taught you? That seat there. Not anybody can just come to that seat. What has it taught you?
What has it taught me? I don't know how to answer that question. What I do is I come in the morning, I go straight to my work, I do my work and satisfy myself, and as I go out in the evening or at night out of my office, I tell myself, have I contributed my best? Have I taken the decision that I think is the interest of Nigerians and the interest of Nigeria? If my answer is yes, I go to bed to sleep.
But if your answer is no, has there been
Unfortunately, my answer has not been no. Unfortunately, my answer has not been no so far.
What would you like to be remembered for? When Godwin Emefiele is spoken about, lecturers will use you also as examples.
Nancy,
universities.
I never like to talk about what I will be remembered for. I leave that to posterity, and it's like doing a self-assessment of myself. I'd like to leave that to posterity. I'd like to leave that to Nigerians to tell the story. But what really keeps me running today is that we have a long way to go. That Nigeria, if things had continued to be as good as they were in the 50s and in the 60s, if, for instance, right, we had, and I use this example, there was a time when this country fed itself with revenue from agriculture. We grew up to hear about groundnut pyramid, the cotton, the palm oil, the cocoa, the cassava, the rubber, which means that this country is endowed with these raw materials, natural resources, right? If we had held strong to that, at the time we found oil, I am telling you, Nancy, this country will be a better, much better country than it is today. But what did we do, Nancy? We found oil and we lowered our guards on the area that fed us in the 50s and the 60s and even early 70s. Today now, we are running back to that. You can imagine if we had held strong to both potentials. Nigeria will be better today. There's a country, I don't want to mention it, you probably may have heard people talk about it. This country has a population of less than 5 million people. Yeah? But that country, the size of its sovereign wealth is about the largest in the world, over $1 trillion. A country with less than 5 million people, with size of sovereign wealth, it's as good as saying size of its reserves is over $1 trillion. That country, they put in place a policy that says that the process of those sovereign wealth cannot be used for anything that is recurrent. They will only be used for infrastructure to develop the country. That country produces fish, and the country feeds itself with process of export of that fish. And when we banned, when we restricted FX allocation for fish, I met some of the officials of that country. They said, please allow your people to import fish. I said, but we are not stopping it, but only that we restricted foreign exchange because we believe we can produce our fish as well. They said, please, see what you can do. I said, no problem. We'll see what we can do. But what can you also import from my country? They said, nothing. I felt that was an insult on Nigeria. What that meant to me, that they feel that I am brainless, and that they are the ones who are intelligent. Trade should be symbiotic. It cannot be one way. Because in every business that you do, what you crave for is a win-win situation. When even a husband and a wife, when they sit in a house, it must be a win-win situation. The day the woman thinks that she's the only one losing and the man is the only one gaining, there will be divorce. That is a natural thing. about life. Relationship, business, everything must be on a win-win situation. That's the story.
What gives you the greatest joy? What gives you the greatest joy?
again, that's a very difficult question.
Because I'm asking you this question because Nigerians would like to know the other side of Emefiele, away from the governor of the central bank. What gives you the greatest joy? Is it your family? Is it your children? What is it that gives you the greatest joy?
I think that it's not just about serving the country in this position as the governor of central bank, but it's about the fact that in my entire career, spanning over 31 to 32 years, I have given a lot to my job, both as a banker and as a central bank. And my gratitude goes to my wife. Happy about my family, happy about my wife and my 2 little boys.
Do you have any fear at all? Do you have any fear? Is there anything that makes you afraid?
Nothing.
Perhaps for the country, is there anything that makes you afraid?
No, even for the country, it's not about being afraid. It's about saying that it's a very simple thing to do. It's only that we must apply ourselves well as a country. And I repeat, if God has put you in a position of leadership, please apply yourself well and give the best to your country. If you know you cannot, please give way to those who can do it and give the best to their country.
What would you say about your staff here at the Central Bank of Nigeria? Have they been supportive?
Excellent people, and very extremely supportive people. The Central Bank is an institution that has, I'll use the word, the brightest and the best amongst other central banks in any part of the world. They can stand tall everywhere because the facilities are provided for them to present themselves as the best. And I'm happy when I go out. I feel good that my colleagues in central bank here, anywhere they stand to talk, anywhere they stand to represent this country, they do so and with a lot of respect from their colleagues.
So this is a way to tell your staff that they are doing a very good job.
And I want to thank them. They are doing a very excellent job.
Governor, please, can you finish this sentence for me? I believe. Just put anything in it. I believe. For me, I believe that Nigeria will be a greater country than it is right now. For you, what is it? I believe.
I believe in Nigeria. I believe that this country has potentials. I believe that the opportunities are immense in this country. I believe that there's nothing that you want you cannot achieve. Be focused, be dedicated, but have at the back of your mind that as you do so for the good of your country, you are not going to be a loser.
You're not going to be a loser. So what would you tell people that told you ab initio and perhaps are still telling you that, oh, Godwin Emefiele wasn't doing his job, he doesn't know his job, used a lot of adjectives I don't want to use here. What would you tell them?
Yeah, they probably said I didn't even go to school at all, but it is fine. But the truth is that those are some of those things that I said that gives you a kick and say, look, you must remain focused and do what you think is right and be happy. But I'm telling you that I feel delighted that the results are beginning to show. But a lot of work needs to be done. And I'm so positive that we will get there.
Does it bother you that people say sometimes a lot of bad things about you, the central bank? The central bank is one institution that gets a lot of knocks. Does that bother you?
Well, I must say that as a person, sometimes when you think through it and you think about what sacrifices you're making, everything you are doing to correct what you didn't create, these were exogenous problems, external shocks, external problems. They are not problems that you created with your hand, but sometimes feel bad when you read through these things. But again, what do? All you need to do is to remain focused and seeing to it that what can you do to make sure that you pull everybody out of the problems that we have unfortunately found ourselves. And I think that's just the little thing. You get bothered sometimes, but you have to move on because you don't cry over spilled milk. You don't cry over something you can't control. Oh. Think about what you can do, what you can control, and begin to focus on it. And I think that's the journey. I mean, that's the destination. That's all.
How do you relax?
If you relax?
Yes. How do you relax?
If I relax at all?
Yes. Do you?
Well,
because it's about like work.
It's a lot of work, and you will just continue to do the work. That's all. You will relax after work. Do you understand?
Are you talking about when you retire?
Yes.
Perhaps during the weekends, what do you do? Do you play golf? Do you do any of those things?
Unfortunately, I don't do all those things.
Golf, no, you don't do
well, maybe I can see the opportunity as usual to advertise my club, Chelsea. I just see
yeah, also you're Chelsea fan.
And watch TV and watch Chelsea, and I want to see them win their matches. When they don't win, I feel sad, but what do you do? It's a game.
Oh, that means we're on the same team then, because I'm a Chelsea fan too. Fantastic.
Good.
Good. As we end this interview, we've exited the recession. How do we progress on this journey so far? Is that progress?
It's delightful to say, yes, that we've exited recession, but like I said earlier, this is a country that grows its population at an average of 3% per annum. This is a country whose population will attain 450 million naira by the year, 450 million people in the year 2050. It's a lot of work that we need to do. First, yes, growth today, third quarter at 1.4. That is good, but it is not where we should be. A lot of work still needs to be done, and I believe that we can only begin to say rest on our oars as we begin to trend growth to close to about 6, 7, or even double-digit growth. Everything that needs to be done that will catalyze the economy in this direction, we as policy makers have the responsibility to see to it that this is done. If it is not done, then I would say it will be very unfortunate. But I pledge to continue to give my best, and that is what I do expect all policy makers to do. That Nigeria and that Nigerians, their progress, their prosperity, their well-being must be at the center of every decision that we take.
Finally, we should take the credit for all of this, or everything happening. Perhaps we should take the credit.
I think I must very boldly say that the person who takes the credit for this is the President and Commander-in-Chief, President Buhari, because he set the tone. He's been very supportive, because there are certain you could be in a situation where when a leader is not there to give you the kind of support that you need, then you can't achieve the level of progress that you've achieved. He is somebody who believes that the right things have to be done. He is somebody who believes in Nigeria. He's somebody who says, look, why, and I keep giving the example, why should you import rice? Or if you say that we can't grow rice, then eat cassava or eat fufu, eat tofu shinkafi until you can grow rice. And he gave the example. So look, if people say by restricting FX for fish that there's no fish, then let them eat bush meat. I'm sorry to use the word. Then if there's no bush meat, then eat your fufu without meat until you grow the capacity to grow your fish. That is somebody who believes that we can do it. And as we create the opportunities for our people, we can do it. And I'm happy that we are doing it, and we still have a long way to go. And we can only just continue. As we continue in this trajectory, it can only be better for our country. We'll create jobs for our youth, we'll create opportunities for Nigerians, and Nigeria will be a better country than it is today.
Thank you, Mr. Governor.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
All right, that's the much we can take on this edition of the program. What more can I say? You've heard it all from the man at the head of the Apex Bank of Nigeria, the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Godwin Emefiele. I am Nancy Nnaji. Like I always say, be the best you can be and be the change that you want to see. Bye now.
Thank you.